Part 4. Generous People. 31. So many reasons to be happy. Aloud. Sunday mornings in the shelter always began the same way. And the first Sunday in February was no different. Aud returned from work in time for breakfast, showered, and picked out one of his favorite suits. At 8 a.m., we rode the closet-size elevator down to the ground and followed my immaculately dressed husband as he strode out to Park Avenue. As soon as Tani hit the sidewalk, he exploded into life. He sprinted to the end of the block, head thrown back, arms pumping, his little legs a blur. He has always run like this, fast and free. It's as if he is propelled by his own personal hurricane. But on this particular Sunday, Tani had two good reasons to be happy. First, the chess program. On Thursday, he had attended his first session, and he hadn't stopped repeating the words that Coach Russ, who turned out to be a man, had said at the start. In chess, the people who work the hardest are the ones who do the best. Regardless of your circumstances or resources, anyone can be good. All you need is the will and the passion. Aud and I both liked the sound of Coach Russ a lot. Of course, being Tani, he hadn't stopped there. He told us, more than once, Coach Russ said that one of the best players he has ever worked with grew up in the South Bronx in New York watching YouTube videos. Within less than 3 years, he went from never playing to becoming one of the youngest American chess masters. Right now he's studying at one of the best universities in the world, and Coach Russ says if he can do it and get so good by being determined and working, there are no excuses for any of us. So far, Tani hadn't asked to borrow my phone to watch chess videos online, but I guessed he'd want to do it eventually. One thing about Tani, he never gives less than 100% to anything he's interested in. Besides the chess program and Coach Russ's words, Tani had another reason to be happy. I had bought him his own chess set and had just given it to him that morning. It cost $5, and it was a lot of money, but I figured that I could take it out of that week's food budget, buy less meat, and hope that the boys didn't notice. Seeing the joy on his face as he opened the chess set made Aud and me happy too. I always have loved Sundays, but on that Sunday in particular, I knew that we were all blessed. Austin had settled in well at school, and his early grades were excellent, especially in science. Aud, tired as he was looking forward to being away from work until Monday evening. And even though there was a bitterly cold wind blowing down Park Avenue, Austin, Tani, and I were wearing brand new winter coats, gifts from the kind people at Tani's school. But mostly, I was happy because we were together. Our little family, so far from home, but united. Tani stopped when he reached the corner and waited, bouncing on his toes and laughing at the three of us walking with our shoulders hunched against the wind. "Come on," he yelled. "If you run, you won't feel the cold so much." When Nigerians dress for church, they don't dress to run. So we walked, and I remembered another reason to be grateful. I was happy because we were safe. We were in a city filled with millions of strangers from all over the world, a city that knows what it is like to suffer at the hands of terror, and we had nothing to fear. We were safe. The lights turned green when we reached Tani. But when we crossed 29th Street, instead of racing ahead toward the next finish line, he stopped and looked up. We all followed his gaze. Tani was looking at a building that had been under construction ever since we moved into the homeless shelter. The work was almost complete, and the safety barriers were finally being peeled away. For the first time, we could see the glass and steel beneath. The surface caught the light like a diamond. "Wow," said Aud. We kept walking, but Tani held back, his eyes still locked on the building above. There was something about the way he was looking that made us all stop. "What is it, Tani?" He looked back at us, half smiling, half serious. "Very soon," he said, "by God's grace, we will build a very tall building just like that one there. And we will be living on top of it, and all the other floors we will make into a shelter so that other people who need a home can come and live with us." Aud straightened his tie, his eyes fixed on Tani. "Amen," he said, his voice deep and loud and long, like thunder beyond the horizon. Austin and I joined in too. "Amen. Amen. Tani nodded and sprinted off toward the subway, impatient to get to church. That night, long after we had spent our usual half-hour praying, singing, and reading the Bible with the boys before sending them to bed, I lay on my own bed, reading. Kaode was deep asleep on his when suddenly I knew that I needed to go check on the boys. I rode up in the elevator and saw a light coming from under their door. That was unusual. Even before Boko Haram made us a target, the boys had both been excellent sleepers, and nothing about that had changed since moving to America. They always went to sleep as soon as they were told, and they always slept right through till morning. If anything, the challenge was waking them up rather than making them sleep. I knocked. Austin? Tani? Are you awake? Austin opened the door. What's going on? I said. Is something wrong? Austin looked guilty. He stepped to one side so that I could see what was going on. He and Tani were obviously in the middle of a game of chess. The board that I had bought Tani was on the floor, in the tiny gap between their two beds. By the looks of it, they had been playing for some time, but the game was nowhere near finished. I fought to hide my smile and adopted my sternest face instead. Boys, you should be asleep by now. I know, said Tani. But we're just doing what Coach Russ says. And what does Coach Russ say? He says that we should always fight to become better every day. That we should be eager and willing every practice, ready to participate and hungry to become a better player every day. Please, Mom, it won't take long. Just a few minutes. I thought for a moment. Okay, 5 minutes. But I'm staying to make sure you finish when you agree. 5 minutes, said Tani. Okay then. I watched Tani's expression change. He half smiled, half frowned. It was the same look he had earlier when he was looking up at the building and talking about the future. It is a look that I have come to know well over the last 2 years. 2 minutes and a handful of moves later, Tani slapped down a piece and held out his hand for his older brother to shake. Checkmate, he said, pumping Austin's arm and jumping into bed. Good night, Mom.
32, my first tournament. Tani. Austin and I have always been good together. Even when we have the biggest fight ever because he's pulled my covers off in the morning to get me out of bed, and I get so cold that my feet turn to ice, we always make up within a maximum of 2 hours. We both like it when everything is good between us. When I started playing chess, I wanted to tell Austin everything I was learning. I think that some other brothers would not want their little brother doing this, especially when the older brother had tried to teach the little one chess in the first place but basically got it all wrong. But Austin was good. Austin is always good. He wanted me to tell him how to play chess even if it meant telling him that he'd made some mistakes. How great is that? So I taught him everything that Coach Sean and Coach Russ taught me. I told him about how the pieces moved, about being in control and making good decisions. I think I got most of it right, and Austin listened hard. Pretty soon we started playing together. And that's when we both started to improve. When Mom bought me the chess set, we stayed up late a lot. Austin didn't even mind that I pretty much always won. He just concentrated hard and stared at the board, and I could tell that he was doing deep thinking even though I had not explained anything about it to him yet. So I was playing a lot of chess. Even when Austin was not around, I was playing chess using Mom's phone to do chess puzzles at a site that Coach Russ had told Mom about. I liked doing them, and the more I played, the more I wanted to play. I didn't know how many puzzles I was supposed to be doing, so I just kept doing them for as long as Mom would let me have her phone. I was so excited for Thursday to come around. As soon as school finished at 2:30 p.m., I put on my chess club t-shirt. It's blue and says PS 116 NYC on the front, and the letters make chess pieces across the top. It's cool. When the chess program started at 2:35 p.m., I was at the front. I had already worked out that when Coach Russ and Coach Sean spoke, I wanted to be able to hear every word and see them up close. They're really different people because Coach Sean is really soft-spoken and deep-thinking and talks like every word is a great chess move. Coach Russ is the opposite. He talks real fast, and his eyes are full of light and life, and even just listening to him talk for a few seconds I start to feel all excited and full of energy. So when Coach Sean and Coach Russ both came in and started talking, I was sitting right at the front. They were both explaining about hard work and how important it is to put all your effort in if you want to become good at chess, but some kids behind me were talking, so I turned and shushed them. I looked back and for a moment thought that I was in trouble. Coach Russ was pointing at me, saying, "I need to talk to you about Tani and Aviel." I didn't know who Aviel was, but I was so worried. I thought that the shush was a good thing, but now I guess not. But then Coach Russ smiled at me, and I wondered maybe if I had gotten it wrong. He said, "Now, listen up. You know we keep on telling you how important it is to do your puzzles each week, right?" Some people said, "Yes, Coach Russ." Not all of you are doing them, though, are you? Nobody said anything. I wanted to look around but decided not to. Coach Russ kept talking. "Every time you complete a puzzle on the site, it records it and adds up your weekly total. Coach Sean and I go through them every week to see who deserves to be celebrated and who needs some more encouragement to work a little harder. And I've got to tell you that last week Aviel and Tani did way more puzzles than anyone else. Some of you did 40, a couple did 50, but Tani did 112, and Aviel did almost 200. That's the kind of hard work and commitment that you need if you want to succeed at this game." Part of me was really pleased that I had done well. The other part of me was trying to work out how I could beat 200 next week. When I went back the next Thursday, I knew exactly what my puzzle number was because I had checked it that morning. I didn't know whether 253 was going to be more than Aviel's, but I didn't mind. The puzzles were cool. Just doing them was fun. I guess Aviel felt the same way about the puzzles as I did because his total had gone up as well. He was on 283, and the weird thing is that when Coach Russ announced the numbers, I didn't feel bad at all. I just felt happy. I was happy that I had done well and happy that Aviel had done well too. But what made me feel happier than anything else ever was the conversation I had with Coach Russ at the end of the club. He asked me to come and talk with him by one of the desks, and even though I was kind of nervous as I walked over, I could tell by then that when he smiles, everything is okay. He was smiling. It was the first time I had actually had a conversation with Coach Russ, and he started by asking me, "What do you like to be called? Tani, or Tanitoluwa like your mom calls you?" I said I didn't mind, and he said, "Okay, then, it's just Tani." Now, did you ever play chess before you met Coach Sean last month? I quickly decided not to tell him about the paper chess set. I shook my head and said, "No, Coach Russ." "And so you've been playing for just 3 weeks now?" "Yes, Coach Russ." He sat back, and his smile got even bigger. "You're working hard and doing really well, Tani. Are you enjoying it?" I nodded. Then he said something that made me smile even more than he did. "There's a tournament here on Sunday. Would you like to come and play?" I didn't know anything much about tournaments or how they worked, but I said, "Yes, please, Coach Russ." I knew that I wanted to be there. I was so excited when I woke up on Sunday morning. Mom walked with me to school, and it was good that she was there because she got to meet Coach Sean and Coach Russ. They were all laughing and smiling and talking about things, but I wasn't listening. I was starting to feel like I had eaten something bad and my stomach was complaining about it. I know now that it was a big tournament. There were 157 players and more tables with chessboards on them than I could count. To me, it was all so big and serious looking. Next to each board was a chess clock. I'd seen them at the club before but hadn't really used one. Coach Sean must have seen me looking at them because he said, "Don't worry about the clock, Tani. You just hit the button when you've played your move. And if you need help, just ask. We're here." That made me feel better for a few minutes, but when the tournament started and I sat down to play my first match, I felt worse. I got confused about some of the pieces and drew the first game. I know that some people think that it's weird to draw in a game like chess, but it's really simple. If you can't win and your opponent can't win, then you can offer a draw. You get a half point for it, so in competitions, it's better to draw than to lose. So I drew the first game in the tournament, and I also drew the second game too. Someone told me that the players I was up against were all beginners just like me, but that didn't help. My head felt hot and my stomach was painful again, and I couldn't stop thinking about how I was not winning. I didn't like it at all. Coach Sean sat down next to me while I was waiting for my third and final game. He said, "You know what I think about you, Tani?" I shook my head. "I think you're my lion. You're smart, and you're hardworking, and you don't miss a beat. And like a lion cub, you're learning so much right now. Even today, these last 2 games, you're learning. That's all you need to do. Keep trying. Keep playing. Keep learning. Do your best, remember the openings we talked about, and the winning will take care of itself." I felt a little better, but not much. When the last game started, I stopped thinking about winning or losing or drawing and tried to remember the opening that Coach Sean had told me about. I tried to get my pieces into the center of the board and then protect them with other pieces to make sure they were safe. It took a long time, and the other player was good and kept on attacking. But he started rushing his moves, and he made a blunder, so I took one of his bishops. Then I nearly took his queen. I was getting excited and thinking about how I could figure out another way of taking his queen. He had this knight that was protecting her, and all I had to do was take it. I tried one way, then another. And then he was looking at me, holding out his hand, and saying, "Checkmate." I was in tears. Coach Sean and Coach Russ were saying nice things to me, but I was still in tears. I was standing beside Mom, holding on to her, trying to keep my face away from everyone else. Coach Russ was saying, "You don't need to feel bad, Tani. You're just 3 weeks old. Keep on trying. Next one, you will do well." I didn't want to be rude, but I didn't really want to listen either. I wanted to go back to the hotel. But Mom was still talking to Coach Russ. She was saying thank you. Coach Russ said, "He's doing good, Mrs. Adewumi. He's ready to learn, and we can all see that he's a really great guy. We love having him around. This is just the start." The next Thursday I was back at the chess program. I didn't feel bad anymore, and I had completed more puzzles that week than anyone else. Even Aviel. But I was not so excited about that. There was something else I wanted to find out. Because I had now taken part in a tournament, my scores were going to be recorded officially, and I would finally have an official rating. Ever since I had joined the program, I had been learning about ratings, and so I knew that the best players in my school were maybe at 1,600 points, and that grandmasters, the very best players in the world, would have more than 2,500 points. I found Coach Sean and asked him about my rating. He checked his phone and said, 105. Coach Sean got down on his knees beside me. He said, "You okay with that, my lion?" I thought for a moment. 105 was low. Really low. It was probably the lowest score you could possibly get. I said, "I think so. I think it means I can improve." That's right. You can't get lower. There's only one way you can go now.
33. Working toward the future. KO'd. After 4 months of washing dishes 6 nights a week, I was exhausted. I was constantly in pain and feeling as though I were 10 years older. I knew that I had to stop. I was not the only one who felt this way. A lot of the guys at work talked about quitting and making it big one day. They liked talking about their dreams when it was dark outside and there were still hours left to work, but whenever I asked them how they intended to become wealthy, none of them were able to explain their plans in any detail. I was determined that I would not be trapped in a job that was placing so many demands on my body but giving such little reward. So I decided to find my own route toward success. And I started with Google. I searched, "How do you make it big in America?" There was a lot of different advice, but after careful study, I identified the top 3 businesses in which people were having the greatest successes. The first was technology. The second was media. I knew that they were both beyond me. I have no training in science or IT, and I lack the capital required to create a media company. That left the third option, real estate. I had owned property in Nigeria, and I know how to do deals, so I read further. I found out that after a few months of study, I could start out as a real estate agent, work hard, and eventually become a real estate broker, with agents working for me. In time, I could build my own company again. I knew that was a long way off, and I would need to have saved some money and received my work authorization before I could begin. I also knew that I would need a job that would allow me to study in my free time. Washing dishes just wasn't a good fit for me anymore, so I started looking around for other work. It was Pastor Philip who helped again. He introduced me to a woman who owned a domestic cleaning company that worked throughout New York City's 5 boroughs. The pay was the same as the restaurant, but at least I would be working days instead of nights, and I would not have to do all that heavy lifting and scrubbing. There was one other significant advantage that made me want to quit the restaurant and take on the cleaning job. My new boss said that if Oluwatoyin was available on the days I was working, she could join me. We would double our income and get to spend time together. I thought carefully about asking her. She has always been selfless and hardworking, but cleaning people's toilets is not the kind of job you want to introduce to your wife. Besides, Oluwatoyin was already working hard at preparing food for the family and helping the kids with their schoolwork. I was not at all sure that she would want to become a cleaner with her husband. Yet as soon as I raised the possibility of her joining me, Oluwatoyin agreed. "It's okay," she said. "We just need to survive, don't we?" Later that week, we tackled our first apartment together. It was a great success. I took on the bathrooms while she started working in the kitchen. We talked non-stop, although mainly it was me putting my head around the doorway and telling her, "Hey, don't forget I am your principal officer. Are you sure you are working hard enough?" We laughed a lot, worked hard, and were able to clean 2 different apartments in that one day. We even made $15 in tips, which was unexpected but very welcome. Oluwatoyin continued to cook at Pastor Philip's house on Wednesdays and Fridays, but on most of the other weekdays, she joined me. We fell into a steady rhythm, tackling each new apartment with increasing efficiency. We laughed a lot, but we also were able to talk. We did not discuss the past too often, but mainly focused our attention on the present and the future. We agreed that things had been difficult, and that we both knew what we needed to do in order to cope. "I know that I have to pull myself together," said Oluwatoyin. "I might feel down when I am sitting in the room at the shelter, but when I get out, I do not want anyone to see me and think that I am unhappy." It was helpful for me to hear, and neither of us liked the idea of other people having pity on us. We did not expect anyone to give us money, and we certainly did not want to beg. All we needed was the opportunity to work. One day when the city was hot and humid, Oluwatoyin and I loaded up our heavy bags of cleaning supplies and took the subway to Brooklyn. It was our first time at the apartment, but I could tell from the name on the contact form that the client was Nigerian. True enough, when he opened the door, he looked just like us. I introduced myself and Oluwatoyin. He stared. He was clearly confused. "Are you Nigerian?" Oluwatoyin smiled back. "We are. How long have you been living here?" He paused, his eyes darting from one of us to the other. 30 years, he mumbled. He hung by the doorway, unsure whether to let us in. "Are you sure you want to clean? You don't look like the regular people they send." "Thank you," I said. "We've got all our equipment with us and are ready to work. This is what we do." He stood back and let us in, and we started work. It wasn't unusual for the owner to be in the home while we cleaned, and most of the time. This did not stop Oluwatoyin and me from talking, joking, and laughing. But this man was different. He barely lifted his feet as I swept beneath him, and he sighed as if we were nothing but an inconvenience. Neither of us felt much like talking. After we had been cleaning for more than 2 hours, he pulled from a cupboard 5 large bags of clothes that looked and smelled as though they had not been washed in months. "I want you to wash all this as well," he barked. I had checked the booking carefully before we arrived, as I always did, and there was no mention of doing any laundry. So I held up my hands and tried to explain that my boss had not said anything to us about any laundry. "I don't care what your boss says. I want you to do my laundry." "But you did not tell us that we were going to wash clothes." It would have cost another $30, and we would have started the laundry before we began cleaning. "We're nearly finished here, and it would take another 3 hours to work through what you have there. If you make a booking for next week and say that you want laundry, the boss will make sure there is enough time." He looked at me as though I were filth. "Get out," he ordered. I looked at Oluwatoyin, who seemed as confused as I felt. "I said get out," he shouted. "Okay," I said. "Okay. There is just $80 to pay for the cleaning." He took a step toward me, his fist clenched. It was obvious he had no intention of paying. "Out." He opened the door and we both rushed out, Oluwatoyin still holding her polish and cloth in one hand, me struggling to put on a shoe. The ride home felt twice as long as the journey there. I was worried that Oluwatoyin was disturbed by the incident. "Were you scared?" She scrunched up her face and shook her head. "No," she said, smiling and holding my hand. "There is nothing to worry about, Kaode. In fact, I am almost glad for the lesson that it has taught me." "Really? What lesson?" "That man was just like some of the people at home. He looked down on us because he thought we were poor, and he took advantage of us because he thought we were weak. Nobody else has treated us this way here in New York. It reminds me that we have been placed right where we need to be, in a city that can give us a future. A future of hard work and sweat? Yes. What better future is there?"
34, my first ever trophy. Tani. It's weird, but do you know that some of the kids who come to the chess program don't really want to play chess? Maybe they like it a little, and maybe they like being with their friends. Maybe they go because there's nobody at home and so they have to stay at school. But they don't love chess. I don't know how I felt about chess before I played in my first tournament, but after I drew 2 games and lost 1 game, something changed for me. It started with practice. I got really into doing the puzzles, and so by the time that I had been playing for 1 month, I was completing 400 or 500 puzzles every week. Then Coach Sean invited me to enroll in a chess club that he ran every Saturday morning. He said it was in Harlem, so I might not be able to make it, but I asked Mom and she said yes, so I went. It took a long time to get there on the bus, but it was worth it because I got to spend 3 hours playing chess each Saturday. The other great thing about Saturday Chess Club was that I got to meet some other kids. All of them loved chess, and I liked watching them, especially when I could see that they were doing deep thinking. It doesn't always look the same for everyone, but a lot of people go really still and look at the board like it's about to burst into fire. Some of them stare up at the ceiling as if they are looking for a spider that's hiding in a corner. The more time I spent playing chess, and the more time I spent around chess players, the more I learned. Of course, I already knew the pieces and how they moved, but what I didn't know was the way that chess is such a big deal in New York. Coach Sean was the one who told me the most about it. He told me about people going to Washington Square Park and Union Square Park and other places to play. He said that almost every school kid was given an opportunity to learn how to play, and that the city had a special place in the history of the game. A lot of this was thanks to a man named Bobby Fischer, who some people say was the greatest chess player ever to have lived. His family moved to New York when he was 6 years old, and they were poor. When they moved, he started to learn chess and played with his older sister, but she got bored, so he had to play on his own. He played a lot and got so good that, when he was 13 years old, one of the best chess masters in the whole country came to New York to play him. Even though Bobby Fischer was half the age of the master, he won. It was such a famous game that people called it the game of the century. I liked hearing about Bobby Fischer, but I liked it even more when Coach Sean told me some things about his own life. He said, "Chess saved my life. For a time, I survived by playing blitz on Wall Street for money." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Wall Street or blitz?" I said, "Both." Okay, Wall Street is where the really rich guys work in the city. Blitz is when you play but your game only lasts a really short time, like 2 or 3 minutes. It's fast, and you've got to be at your best. And if you're playing for money, there are no excuses. It'll cost you if you don't play your best. Back at the hotel, I discovered that Coach Sean was right about chess and New York. When some of the people who worked there heard that I was playing, they started inviting me to visit them in the office to play. I liked that, especially when I won. After I had been playing for 2 months, I went to another tournament. It was at a different school, and this time there were more tables with boards on them because there were more people who wanted to play. It was louder, and there were lots of people I had never seen before, but I tried not to let my mind be distracted. I just thought about the puzzles I had been doing and remembered how the board looked when I had a really good opening. Coach Sean was there, too, of course, and he helped me get ready. There were 3 or 4 of us from PS 116, and he got us to gather around him in a circle while he said, "You're all my lions. You've all worked hard, and you all can do your best today." I don't remember much about the tournament. I remember that I won the first game when my opponent made a massive blunder. The second game was tough because I was playing against a boy who was really good and played really fast. It made me get a bit distracted and think about what it would be like to play blitz, but then I told myself to stop thinking about that and concentrate on the game and nothing else. When I did that and made sure I did not think about anything other than the game before me, I won that one too. Then the third game was strange because my opponent kept on looking over at his coach. I think he was nervous, but I just made sure that I controlled the pieces the way I wanted to control them. And I won that one as well. So I won the tournament. Everyone was really excited for me, and I was so happy too. People were saying, "Wow, you've only been playing for 2 months, and you've just gone 3-0. I liked it when they said that. I liked it when Coach Sean gave me a massive high five and Coach Russ told me, "I'm so proud of how hard you're working," and when Mom gave me a big hug that lasted forever. But do you want to know what I liked best about it all? I won my first ever trophy. The second time I got a trophy, I didn't really win it. It was at a tournament that Coach Russ organized. I finished 11th, and because it was probably only my 6th or 7th tournament, I didn't know that people who finish 11th don't usually get trophies. So I was feeling sad when the 10 players who finished above me were all invited up at the end to receive theirs. Just when people were about to leave, Coach Russ came over to me and said, "What's up?" I told him that I was not happy because I had not won a trophy, and he said, "Wait there." I waited. He came back a few minutes later. He was holding a trophy and a pen. I watched him write something on the trophy and hand it over to me. It said, "Tani, most improved player. Never stop and never ask for a trophy again." I looked back at Coach Russ. He was smiling at me. I decided then that I would never ask for another trophy. If I was going to get any more, I'd win them myself. Winning my first tournament changed my ranking from 105 to 365, and that made me happy, too, but there were lots of other kids in the chess program who had way higher scores than me. So I just kept doing the same things that I had been doing before. I tried to do as many puzzles as I could each week and asked Austin to play with me whenever he was free. I was always sitting at the front and listening to everything the coaches said at the Thursday chess club, and I did the same on Saturday mornings too. I said yes to everything that Coach Sean and Coach Russ suggested. There were different puzzles to try and different openings to learn, and there were lots and lots of YouTube videos to watch. And that was how I heard about Fabiano Caruana. Fabiano is the world number 2. He became a grandmaster when he was 14. And guess where he grew up? Brooklyn. I watched so many videos of Fabiano. He's amazing. He's won almost everything that you can win, and he's really cool. But this is the best bit. One day, maybe 2 months after I won my first trophy, Coach Sean asked me and Aviel and another kid named Lily to stay behind after club on Thursday. He said, "There's a charity chess event next week where people pay money to play grandmasters. Fabiano is going to be there, and I've been given 3 tickets to go and watch. Would you 3 lions like to come along?" I couldn't speak. I was so excited. I couldn't sleep much either, especially not the night before. And on the day of the charity event, when Mom and I showed up and saw Fabiano was actually there, I was almost shaking. It was kind of like a tournament. There were lots of boards laid out and people getting ready to play, but it didn't look much like either of the 2 tournaments I had been to before. Instead of kids wearing their school chess program t-shirts, there were all these adults wearing suits. And instead of plastic tables and chairs, the tables and chairs here were made of wood, and through the big glass windows, you could see almost all of the city. There were 20 grandmasters in the room, and I recognized some of them from the videos I'd watched. They were all smiling and looked really normal, which surprised me because I thought that maybe they would be taller or really serious or kind of different from other people. But what was even more amazing than seeing all those great chess players was that Coach Sean told me he was going to introduce me to Fabiano. I said, "Do you know him?" And he said, "Sure. He's from Brooklyn, remember?" And I said, "Do you think he'll talk to me?" Coach Sean frowned and looked confused. "Are you kidding? He'd love to." I followed Coach Sean as we walked over to a crowd of people. I was really shaking. Everyone looked really tall, and it was strange not knowing anyone because normally at a tournament I would know Coach Russ and Coach Sean and other coaches as well as some of the players. But here was just a crowd of strangers and I. Coach Sean stepped aside, and suddenly Fabiano was standing right in front of me. He held out his hand for me to shake and said, "It's nice to meet you, Tani." I shook his hand but didn't know what to say. My mouth had forgotten how to speak. Coach Sean was smiling and took a photo of Fabiano and me standing together. I was still silent, but I was listening to every word that Coach Sean said. "You've gotta watch this kid, Fabiano. I'm telling you, he's good. He's been playing 4 months, and he's already winning tournaments."